Eric, Kristy, come on up. I love to hear people's stories. You know, you have a story. Everyone has a story to tell. And we're going to hear today Kristy and Eric's story of how God has did some incredible things in their life and taken them from where they were to where they are now, some of the things he showed them and taught them all along the way. And I can guarantee that some of you will find yourself in the middle of this journey. Some of you are already there. Some of you have been there and gone through it, and some of you probably will face it. And so it's good to hear somebody else's story, what God has done to remind us of his faithfulness. So go ahead, tell a bit about yourself. Who you are, how'd you got here?
All right, well, how we got here. I was born and raised in Buffalo Valley Church of the Brethren. My parents were both Brethren church goers. My mom was from up in Sugar Valley Church of the Brethren. My dad was at Buffalo Valley, and when they got married, stuck there. 2 years.
And that's in Mifflinburg.
And that's in Mifflinburg, yep. 2 years ago, we came here on your guys' 20th year anniversary, which was really kind of cool because we got to see what you guys were about. That just kind of set us up for, you know, whether or not we want to be here or not. I give credit to Danelle Cressinger for saying, hey, I really think you should come here. She's one of my closest friends and a coworker, and I love her. You're welcome. But yeah, so that's kind of how we got here.
Yep. And we have a history.
Yes, we do.
We go way back. When I was doing Youth for Christ in the Mifflinburg area, way back in the mid-'80s, early '90s, met Kristy, her family, especially her older sisters,
right,
who were part of that on a regular basis, almost weekly. And so I kind of ran into their family and got to know their family, the Stiers family. And so we have a history, we have a connection.
We do, and it's kind of funny because the first time that I was ever involved, I was actually kind of too young. I wasn't supposed to be there. I was a couple years, well, at least a year younger than what was normally. But my sisters were involved, and they had a scavenger hunt, a human scavenger hunt. And you had to go around and pick up people, and you were supposed to have different, like, I think I was supposed to have curlers in my hair. I don't remember exactly, but that kind of sticks there. But they were supposed to go around and asked Alan, hey, can we grab our sister? And so that was my first experience with Youth for Christ. And with Alan. So that was...
Yeah, long time ago. But it's neat how God connects from years past. And remember this, no matter who you meet, you're sowing into somebody's life. You may only meet them once and have one conversation. You may wave at them once, but you're sowing something. You may never see them or talk to them again, but there's something you're leaving behind. There's something you're putting into somebody's life. And that could make a difference in their life for a long time. So you and Eric got together shortly after that, not too long after you graduated.
Yeah, back in '96.
Okay.
We got married. But so the reason why we're sitting up here right now is because a year ago on January 16th, you gave a message about tithing. And we attend the first service, not that we don't like you guys, but we like the timing better. Who knows why? But we were sitting right back there, and as he's preaching, I'm going, yes, yes. And so after the service, I said to him, we have a pretty interesting tithing story, and he's like, all right, give it, you know. So I went home, I wrote it down, thought all I had to do was give it to him, and that would be the end of it. Yeah, that didn't happen. He did give me a whole year plus, and God was working on my heart. But it was one of those things that Scripture, James 4, I think it's 17.
It's there.
That's okay?
Our computer person fell asleep. He nodded off back there.
It says, remember, it is sin to know what you ought to do and then not do it. And it was one of those things that God kept saying to me, you need to do this. And I went, and then I dragged my rock, my human rock and best friend to say, you need to do this with me because it's not just my story, it's our story.
Yep.
So my growing up, I told you about my family a little bit. We lived in a big house. My dad actually maybe had one or two of you in school. He was a math and computer science teacher over at West Snyder High School. we had a lot of things. Had a big house, was deep in, grandparents, church, everything. And we were taught young to tithe. And tithing was one of those things that when I got my first job, I did it. There wasn't really a question. It was just something that I did. But then again, I lived at home. I had no bills. I didn't make a ton of money. If I brought home $100, okay, $10, sure, I can give $10, no problem. I never really knew any different. That was just how we did it. I'll let Eric explain what his was like.
$100 was a lot for a first. How many remember their first job? How many remember their first paycheck? I remember I worked 1 day a week at Wise Markets on Saturdays when I was in college. I think my paycheck was like $22.19. Every time I'd be like, ooh, all right. Yeah. So my big tithe was like $2.
I don't know if many of you caught chickens, but we made a lot more money.
I only bagged groceries.
So growing up, my family didn't have a lot. And we went to this little church in White Springs. And my mom always put money in the offering plate, but that's what it was. It was just offering. And she always made sure my sister and I had money to put into. So growing up, once I got a job catching chickens, it was just automatic to put money in the offering plate. But tithing wasn't really a thing. Not till we started going to Buffalo Valley and they started talking about tithe, And so I always just gave the money because that's what you were supposed to do. I didn't know there was really a reason behind it, other than you're paying the bills, right?
Yeah. So in '96, we decided we were going to get married. We did have a baby on the way, which is a whole nother testimony in and of itself. But we needed to figure out if we could do it. So you sit down, you figure out your bills. Okay, can we make this work? Well, we figured we could do it. However, we didn't really think about tithing at that point in time. Tithing at that point was, okay, if we have the money, we'll put it in. But, I was pretty much the push of, hey, let's make sure that we're giving something. So, my $10 might have been $20, and we gave it when we attended church. We were pretty regular attenders, but, if you didn't make a Sunday, you just kept that money in your pocket. So as life went on, there's these envelopes that come in your mail that tell you, hey, you want a little more cash? Just use this little piece of plastic. And I like to call them the little pieces of, or little plastic devils. Because that's kind of what they are. They're a lie, because they tell you that you have more than what you think you do. There is so much freedom that they want to give you on, here, you don't have the money right now? That's okay. You can pay it back later. But then they don't tell you that later is going to continue to be longer and longer and longer and grow and grow.
And now it's like 20%. It's like,
it's more than that now, I think.
Yeah, it could be.
But it was one of those things that we fell into, that we'll put it on credit. We'll put it on credit. One of the things that my parents never told me, they still never told me, but one thing I want to make sure, anybody who is younger, starting out, one of the things that you need to know is the house that you grew up in and all of the things that were in that took a lot of time to get. Your parents, your grandparents, whoever you lived with, they didn't start out with all that. That took years and years and years to accumulate. And if you think right off the bat, I'm going to have that house, that brand new house, furniture, brand new, the car, the garage, and all that kind of stuff, you're telling yourself a lie, because that's not really how it works unless you decide to use those little plastic devils and try to get it all at once.
Yeah, and that could put you into really a tailspin that you can be in for years. And listen, there's no condemnation today if that's where you are. But this is God orchestrated this day to remind you or to encourage you or to challenge you. If you're in that place that debt has got a hold of you, there's a way out. You don't have to stay there. okay? We have help. Come see us. Come talk to us. We have people that will help you, talk to you through your finances and get you on the road to freedom. And that's really what it is. It's freedom.
You know, starting out, she mentioned, we put it down on paper to see what we could afford. But the reality was, I brought a lot of debt to the relationship because as a single guy, I had a truck, I had a car, I had a motorcycle, I had a boat. I bought all those things not thinking about, well, I'm going to have kids someday and I'm going to have a house to pay for. So I didn't look to the future then like I do now, obviously. Yeah. But that was a struggle. And, all of those things I had then, I don't have any of that anymore. So that was, really a waste of the future.
We still do have a motorcycle, but yeah, it's not the same one.
Has a sidecar, right? I don't know.
No.
That's the getaway car.
So here we were, two people trying to figure this all out. We had our first son in 96, our daughter in 99, and then in 2001, found out, well, actually right before 2001, but found out I was pregnant with a third child, which we were not expecting. We were done. You had a girl or a boy and then a girl. That was the family. However, God knew better. And I'm so glad he did because Cody definitely rounds us out. He's definitely that piece that we need to have. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we were doing was we were still trying to give. And every year we tried to up it, maybe $5. Maybe, I don't know, I think we pretty much always did just like $5 increments. But we had never gotten to a point where we were tithing. And the year that we found out we were pregnant, we had a lot of things that happened that made us vulnerable. The car wasn't working right. We didn't have any fuel oil in our house, and it was one of those things we're going, what do we do? And I did share at our church at that point in time that we were in need. And lo and behold, people just came out of the woodwork and they were given and they were giving. And they blessed us. And that wasn't the only time that we ever found ourselves in need. But even while we were in need, we still gave. And there's a passage in 2 Corinthians. There it is. You must each decide in your own heart how much to give. And don't give reluctantly or in response to pressure, for God loves a person who gives cheerfully. And that was something that I had hung on to. Nope, we're not tithing, but we're still giving, and we're happy about it. There were multiple times in that journey that we got to a point that we were like, you know what? We're not winning at this money game. Life is not good because we have accrued so much debt, and God pretty much laid it on both of our hearts that we needed to get out from underneath that. We went through a debt creditor thing. I don't remember what it's called. And it wasn't necessarily the best one out there, but because of where we had found ourselves, we knew we needed to do something. We knew we couldn't do it on our own anymore, and we needed to have help. It was a long journey. I know that started around 2004, where we just kind of threw up our hands and said, okay, can't do this. And it took a long time to get out from underneath all of that debt, but we were living just on our income, and we were doing pretty good. I mean, didn't have everything that we wanted, but we were doing pretty good. And then the 2007 recession happened. And when that happened, we were like, oh, okay, we don't have all this debt. We don't have any credit cards. We know how to, live on our paychecks. And I look around, and I'm a hairdresser, and one of my coworkers' client was a doctor. And she came in, and she's like, oh, man, this recession's really hitting hard. And I'm thinking to myself, but you're a doctor. You make tons of money compared to us. How in the world is this hitting you harder than us? But in hindsight, we were already having to learn. We already had to go through not having everything that we wanted, but being able to go through each day and trusting God for it.
And that's the bottom line of trusting who he is in your life and having the faith to move forward, even through the hardest of times, to learn what he wants you to learn. And sometimes you have to go through and hit the bottom before you begin to move forward with him. The problem is sometimes we want to be in control and we want it the way we want it, instead of saying, God, I don't know what I'm doing, I need your help, and seeking help for somebody else. And that's what eventually you guys found that out.
Yeah, really, there's a lot of emotions that went through all of that. For myself, I deal with everything in two ways. I'm either angry or I'm happy, so I was angry a lot, right? You know, I didn't understand why this was taking so long to get fixed, because I had a good job. I worked at Woodmode for a lot of years, and I knew I made good money, but yet we were still making these bad decisions that put us in these bad situations. But also on top of that, and I didn't think about it until talking to somebody after first service, not having all my ducks in a row personally and not being able to pay the bills. And I don't know if you know this, but the week you gave that testimony at church, I was angry. Because I was angry because, not because you did something, but because I was ashamed of the situation we were in. And the reality is, the church we were going to, I mean, I know God works, but sometimes you need to express what you need for that to work, or for people to understand that follow their calling to give you. And I was very ashamed of that. And it took me a long time to come to terms with that. But, I realized it wasn't the bad decisions I made, but it wasn't about me. It was what God was doing for us, because through all those hard times, we always had food on the table. I remember she gave that testimony, and like she said, we needed heating oil or we would have had none. And at the end of that Sunday, we had money for heating oil. So God moved, but I mean, we had to be vulnerable for that to happen.
Yeah, that's good. Sometimes it's all about pride, isn't it? We're so proud and we want to hold on. We don't want to share because what will people think of me? And you don't understand that somebody's praying and he's trying to speak to you. You may be the answer to somebody's prayer. And we don't think about it that way. But you may be the answer to somebody's prayer who's crying out and saying, God, I don't know what to do. And God puts it on your heart to give $5 here or $10 here or $100 here or to buy oil, whatever it is. And you're the answer to their prayer. And we have to learn to listen to the Spirit and be obedient to what that is.
And I actually have an example of that. In amongst all of that pain, all of this debt and everything, I remember very specifically there was a week where we were in the middle of the week. We needed, I needed gas money for my vehicle. We didn't have any bread and we didn't have any milk. Now, being a hairdresser, we get tips. But they're never, you never know what you're going to get. And I remember very specifically the one day I praying, God, just provide, because I don't know how we're going to do this. And he did. I went in, started, I had a good amount of people in my book, started working. And I wasn't counting them. I was just sticking them in my pocket, and I didn't want to count it. I just wanted to keep going, because I knew that if it was something that I thought I was doing, it wouldn't be right. And I had a lady who was not a tipper, and we're up at the register, and she's like, I don't know why, but I want to give you this. And she hands me $20. And I went, thank you, because $20, that was a lot of money for bread and milk and for gas. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, thank you, God, because normally she never gave me anything. And he was providing. And by the end of that night, when I counted up my tips, we had an abundance. It was more than what I needed, just for those things. And I had to thank God, because he knew what he was going to do. Mm-hmm. I didn't need to worry about it, because he already had it all taken care of.
So God has led you through this journey of finances, not having, tithing, giving, all of those things. But as we wrapping it up, he's given you a few examples just recently that I want you to share about, because it's really important to know that God is still in those things, even with your family, even with your mother. and what does that means. Because sometimes we can think things are so hard that nobody else understands, or we're the only ones going through this, when there's so many people sitting there going through the same thing, and they need to be encouraged. They need to be strengthened to know that God still is in this, that he still cares.
Right.
So share about that.
Yeah, so outside of the tithing, which we do very regularly, and after your sermon, we tithed on his income at that point in time, but God really laid it on my heart, well, why aren't you giving what you make? And I changed my mind, and I said, okay, yep, I will do that, and so that all happened. But what he's referring to, in 2014, my mom was diagnosed with colon rectal cancer. In 2015, my dad and my mom were told by her doctor that she would have dementia someday. And that I didn't find that out until later, but that the doctor told. But about 4 years ago, she was finally diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And it's a terrible disease. It's one of those things that you just never, ever thought you'd have to deal with. My dad had actually a quadruple bypass, and because of that, we knew we needed to have extra caregivers. My sisters and I were not going to be able to give all of our time and still have, dad taken care of and mom taken care of. So we found some. I was the one kind of appointed, I don't know if self-appointed or what, but I was the one who took care of the schedule. And early this year, we lost 3 out of the 4 of our caregivers. And so there was this big gaping hole in the schedule. And I thought, oh my gosh, God, how are you going to make this work? Because I just can't handle it. And I had so much stress and so much anxiety over it. And we came to church Sunday morning, and Gary had come up to me, and she's like, how are you doing? I'm like, I am not good. This is not help. I don't have help. I don't know what I'm going to do. And during the service, the worship team played The Battle Belongs to the Lord. And through that, God just kept telling me, give me your battle. I need your battle. You just need to hand it to me. I will take care of it. I will take care of your mom. And I kept thinking, yeah, God, I know you will, but what about? And he's like, no, just give it to me. And I finally said, okay, it's yours. And the amount of peace that came over me was undescribable. I still have that peace about it. Even though my dad kept telling me, I don't need any caregivers. Well, the beginning of this month, he's like, hey, how come no one's showing up? Because you told me you didn't need anybody. Oh, well, I think I do now. So not only did God keep my mom safe, have all of that worked out, he also worked on my dad to help him realize that he did need help. Because it is not an easy disease. And taking care of somebody, if you know anybody who has dementia or their family member has dementia or Alzheimer's, pray for them fervently because it is not easy. So giving that up, just this past week, we have all of our caregivers. God has provided that kind of through here. I'm in a Bible devotion group with a bunch of people from here, and got introduced to Jennifer, who plays the flute. And she's like, I know people. And because of that, we got people. And that was an amazing thing just for that.
And you also have an amazing testimony.
I do have another amazing testimony.
Which is great.
So 10 years ago, I was in a car accident. I was rear-ended. And I had terrible back pain, right in the center of my back. Nobody could do anything. Nobody, it was going to be there. Chiropractors couldn't do anything. Massage therapists could try, and it would be okay for like a day. And, it was there. And I just figured, okay, I'm going to live like this for the rest of my life. And it was on the 2nd. I believe that was a Sunday here in April. And God just said, hey, Kristy, go over there. There's somebody, that's going to help you. And I went, okay, all right, fine. And I went over, and Dan and Kelly were there. And while they were praying for me, Dan's like, the word fear just keeps coming in my mind, and I don't know why, but maybe you're worried that it's never going to get better. Doctors might be telling you it's not going to get better, and God just wants you to give him your fear. And I went, really? Fear? I don't know that I was thinking of it as fear. It's just pain, you know? But, you know, it felt a little bit better after we were done praying, you know, went home, and throughout the day, God just kept saying the word, give me your fear. Give me your fear. And eventually I was like, okay, God, I need to give you my fear. And fear is one of those terrible monsters that kind of takes over everything. And I think, too, with my mom, that fear was also there, and I just didn't really want to put a name on it. And by the end of the day, actually before the end of the day, I was like, I don't feel it. And it was always so deep, right in the middle of my back. And I'm like, God, thank you. You've taken it away. And I don't have that anymore. Now, I have a little bit of stiffness because we did some extra outside work yesterday, but that's only muscles, and it is not where it once was. And he took it away. So the master physician can take away your pain. You need to give it to him. You need to lay it at his feet. All of the things that you're struggling with, whether it be pain, whether it be, you know, anxiousness for whatever, if you lay it at his feet and you leave it there, he'll take care of it.
Our issue sometimes is we like to pick it up. On a Sunday when we feel it, we hear it, we'll let it go, but then on the way out the door, we pick it back up. And we've got to let it go.
Exactly.
So thank you, guys. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for your honesty, your openness. Appreciate that. Brian, if you would come as we finish up this morning. And listen, this is your invitation. This is your time to respond. If you've heard something this morning, that listen, yeah, I'm in that place. I'm dealing with fear, maybe fear of something physical, maybe something fear of your family. Control. Man, I like to be in control. Who doesn't, right? But control could be the very thing that's stopping the freedom from coming, or God's provision for coming. Or maybe it's just listening to his Spirit. Say, listen, I've heard in the past about giving to this person or that person, or giving to the church or tithing. I haven't been obedient. I haven't done it. You're like, why don't you start? Why don't you try it? Okay? Any of these issues, now's the time to respond. Say, Lord, I hear your voice. I want to move in that. I want to be obedient to what you're telling me and what you want me to do. And so be responsive to him today. Would you do that?